All right, today we are going to continue our work with fractions and we're going to talk about finding common denominators. So remember that a fraction is made up of two parts. You've got the numerator, which is on top of the fraction bar, and the denominator, which is on the bottom of the fraction bar. And it's often important to find a common denominator for a couple reasons. Reason one is that finding common denominators lets us compare fractions more easily. So for example, say I've got 3/7 and 7/15. I want to know which one of these fractions is the larger fraction. And this is actually kind of hard to see. But if we put them on a common denominator, so we make them 45 over 105 and 49 over 105, then now they're very easy to compare. We can see that the 49 over 105 is the larger fraction. So that means that 7 over 15 is bigger than 3 over 7. So those were hard to compare until we put them on the common denominator. The second reason is that we need common denominators to either add or subtract fractions, which will be the next thing that we do. We can't do it if we don't have a common denominator, and I'll talk more about that in the next video. But yeah, we have to be able to do that or else we can't add or subtract, and adding and subtracting are both kind of important. So we're going to have three methods to do this here. So method one is, I guess, the easy one, but it only works some of the time. So sometimes one of your denominators will evenly divide into the other one, which means we're only going to have to change one of the fractions. So in this case, ask yourself, what do you need to multiply that smaller denominator by to be equal to the larger denominator? And then make sure you multiply the numerator by that same number also, or else you'll be changing the value of the fraction. And that's our goal here, is to make equivalent fractions with the same denominators. We don't want to change the value, or we're changing the original problem that we're being asked. So as an example here, let's say we want to add 1/2 and 3/8. We're not going to actually do the addition here, but we want to rewrite this so that we have common denominators. So 2 divides into 8, and it divides into it 4 times. So that means that we need to multiply both the numerator and the denominator of that 1/2 by 4. So when we do that, we get 4 over 8 plus 3 over 8. We didn't have to change the 3/8 because we were able to use that eighth. But we did have to multiply both the 1 by 4 and the 2 by 4, or else we would have changed the value. All right, method two, we can just start writing out multiples of each denominator and choose the smallest number that appears on both lines. So our next example, we want to write 1/6 plus 7/15 with common denominators. And 6 does not divide into 15, so we can't do method one. So what we should do is write out the multiples of 6. So we've got 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, 42. Usually if you write out, 5 or 6 of them, that's probably enough. And then we've got the multiples of 15, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75. And now we want to choose the smallest number that appears on both lines. And in our case, 30 is that number. So that means we want to rewrite both of these fractions to be over 30. And make sure you're multiplying the numerator and the denominator by whatever number will get you that least common denominator. So for the 1/6, we want to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 5, because 6 times 5 is 30. And for the 7/15, we want to multiply both the numerator and denominator by 2, because 15 times 2 is going to get us 30. So when we multiply the 1/6, we get 5 over 30. And when we multiply the 7/15, we get 14 over 30. And now we've got something that we can actually add up. Okay, one last method. Method 3 here is to multiply the denominators together. And the nice thing about this method is that it will always work every single time. But the downside is it might not get you the least common denominator, in which case we may have to simplify the fraction more later. And we'll talk more about that as we go on, but sometimes it's nice to use the smaller numbers and find the least common denominator. But if you can't, for whatever reason, you just don't see it, multiply the denominators together. It will work every time. So let's look at 3/4 plus 2/3, and we want to write that as an addition problem with common denominators. Well, 3 times 4 is equal to 12, so that is going to be our new denominator. And in this case, it's actually going to be the least common denominator. So we're going to have to multiply that 3/4 by 3 over 3 to get our 12ths, and then we're going to have to multiply the 2/3 by 4 over 4 to get our 12ths. So 3 times 3 is 9, so we have 9/12, and then 2 times 4 is 8, so we have 8/12, and now we have an addition problem that we can do. Okay, that's all I've got for this video. Bring your questions, and I'll see you next time.